Just on your own politics, is it fair to say that your politics leans left?
I'm not really sure sometimes. I like to think that I am socially left. Like, I think people should be able to dress and act like however they want. I don't believe in restricting people's social freedoms. I don't know. I don't really see myself as left or right. I just never have.
Well, if you just like objectively zoom out and don't have an insane standard of the extremes, it feels like a lot of your work leans left.
In this video, Lex Fridman tries to trap Andrew Callaghan, but just fails miserably. So Lex opens with what sounds like a pretty innocent question, just asking Andrew where he stands politically. But like, come on, you can already tell he's setting up a narrative. He's not just curious, he's trying to wedge Andrew into the leftist bias box, gently cornering him with that classic centrist objectivity trap. The whole vibe is like, hey, you say you're not left or right, but all your work kind of feels left, doesn't it? And he'll just keep nudging the idea instead of letting that answer breathe. What makes it flop though is Andrew's honesty. He's not just gonna do some smug ideological tap dance, he's just gonna be real. He's socially empathetic, values freedom, and doesn't buy into rigid partisan camps. Lex tries to oversimplify it, but Andrew just drags it right back into nuance. So make sure to watch till the end to see how Lex Fridman tries to trap Andrew Callaghan, but just fails miserably.
I tend to lean toward like the empathetic perspective, which I do think is more on the left than the right. But I'm not into like super like PC stuff. I don't believe in limiting free speech either. I believe in a free internet, which I think is more embraced now by conservatives.
But it does seem that, maybe you can correct me, but I get the sense sometimes that the left attack their own very intensely.
It does happen. But every community has terms of exile. I mean, think about what happens in the conservative realm. Like when Black Rifle Coffee Company like denounced Kyle Rittenhouse. They lost a lot of money too. Like, it's not the right attacks its own too. I mean, think about Bud Light and stuff. Like
Terms of exile.
I mean, like every community has terms of exile. You just got to know who you're engaging with, and you got to make that decision carefully.
It'd be nice if there's an actual write-up of the things you're not allowed to say for each thing. And then I wonder whose list would be longer. It just does feel like the left's list is a little longer.
If you're a conservative and you have a t-shirt with like a demon on it, like, say goodbye. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's certain stuff that they freak the hell out about.
And conservatives are really concerned about pedophiles.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like pedophiles either, but I don't think about it all the time.
Well, one of the things you do in the film is kind of confront one of the QAnon folks, where his concern is that everybody's a pedophile, and you show to him.
Well, calls himself a pedophile hunter and makes videos exposing Democratic elite pedophile cabals, and is himself a convicted child molester. There's an old thing that people say that every confession, every accusation is a confession to a certain extent. So like, it's bizarre that some people's whole life after a big mistake will revolve around trying to seem like the good guy instead of taking accountability for themselves.
Yeah.
It's a common thing you see all the time. Like neighborhood watch people. You know what I mean? Like, what made you that? Like, what did you do, bro? That you feel like you have to get karmic retribution by doing the reverse. I don't get it.
Yeah. Do you think to the degree you have bias, it affects your journalism?
No, but I mean, with the migrant situation, I don't know.
What was that covering that like?
I just got a lot of hate from conservatives for like letting the migrants tell their stories about their journey and stuff.
Well, what did you learn from just going to the border?
I mean, just the sheer desperation that the citizens of the world are in. I mean, there's people who truly believe that America is the only hope for their success and to feed their family, and I think a lot of them are kind of getting catfished.
So Lex keeps this like casual philosopher podcast energy, but make no mistake, he's just laying down traps the whole time. That I wonder whose list is longer thing, just total bait. It's all framed to imply that the left is more censorious, more tribal, and more authoritarian. But Andrew just doesn't fall for it. He flips it right back with facts and examples that actually show how both sides exile their own. That Black Rifle Coffee and Bud Light stuff? He brings real examples that conservatives also turn on their own heart. That's not something Lex wanted to hear. Then Lex leans into the left has more speech rules thing, like he's playing some neutral observer. But that's just disingenuous. Like, bro, you're doing a whole subtle segment on how annoying lefties are. Andrew, though, just stays grounded. He's not afraid to say, yeah, I'm not into the hyper PC stuff either, but he still defends empathy, free speech, and fairness. That's balance, that's integrity. And the wildest pivot here, Lex goes conservatives are really concerned about pedophiles, like that's a normal next topic. But Andrew just wrecks the nonsense by pointing out how one of those self-declared pedo hunters ended up being convicted for the same thing. He's not just throwing punches, he's pulling out receipts and exposing the projection. That whole QAnon adjacent paranoia, Andrew's just not buying it.
Meaning America has its problems too.
It has severe problems. There's extreme poverty here.
But there in America, like if you just compare it to other nations, the level of corruption is much lower to where the opportunity for a person to succeed, to rise is higher.
I wish success on everybody who comes here. But my thing is the expectation that they have and the sort of American dream propaganda they've been installed with isn't necessarily a reflection of contemporary American reality. So I'm talking to people who speak no English and say, I'm here for a better life. I go, where are you going to go? They say, I have no idea. And I'm like, man, that's tough. And you almost think, how bad are things elsewhere for someone to abandon their family, make this journey across multiple continents and end up here with no plan? And it just made me realize how sheltered I am to a certain extent as an American. And walking back what I said a little bit, because I was just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
But what I think of as bad poverty, like let's say West Baltimore or Ninth Ward New Orleans, is nothing compared to what's going on in almost half of the world, if not more. Mm-hmm. And so it just made me zoom out a little bit. And sometimes you forget about third world poverty when you live here for so long. And you get programmed to believe the worst things that are out there is like Kensington, Philadelphia, or Tenderloin, San Francisco. But those are just microcosms of more or less functioning cities. Despite what they might lead you to believe, Philadelphia is a great place. So is San Francisco. But there's places where everywhere is really run down.
Yeah, and like people focus on in major cities in the United States, like homelessness, somehow that's a sign of a fallen empire.
Right.
But, you know, that's a problem. There's definitely, it reveals some mismanagement of cities and government.
I mean, homelessness in Seattle and San Francisco is for sure a result of the housing crisis, especially post-COVID and all the gentrification that preceded it, you know. And it's unfortunate now that the conservative media is saying, like, look at Biden's America, as if Biden created homeless people. And it's just disappointing because, once again, you're seeing the media use real issues that should concern every U.S. citizen and causing people to point fingers at a different political party as responsible for the suffering of others.
Do you think January 6th can happen again?
No. I don't think so.
So all the lessons were learned?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people got really screwed over. I mean,
don't you have a sense that there's a greater and greater growing questioning of the electoral process and all this kind of stuff?
I think that Americans overall are very comfortable with our standard of living. I think people like going to Sonic and waiting in their car and getting milkshakes, and people like going to the AMC theaters, and they like going ice skating and mini golfing and going to the bar after work. I don't think that anyone wants a collapse of the basic structure of the country. Even the most politically divided don't want to see 7-Eleven go away. We are so comfortable. If you look at other countries, even Europe, look at how they protest. And look at the Arab Spring. Those guys were talking like January 6ers, and they actually took control of the government.
Yeah.
You know, and so think about, even if the MAGA crowd took over the Capitol building, it's just a building. I don't know. I just think that Americans, when they talk about Civil War stuff, it's just we're so far from that. Even if the rhetoric is as divided as it was in 2020, it won't happen again.
For it to really happen, it has to be there has to be a level of desperation.
There has to be a level of economic desperation that's causing people to starve, or some basic resource going away, water, something like that.
So, like, Lex keeps trying to pivot the conversation towards this idea that America is still the shining city on a hill, and that Andrew just refuses to sugarcoat it. When Lex goes, but our corruption's low, people can rise, Andrew's like, yeah, maybe relatively, but let's not pretend the American dream isn't basically a scam for a lot of migrants. That's not anti-American, that's just being honest. And dude, the way Andrew breaks it down, with actual human stories, not just vibes, is what kills any chance of Lex's framing working. He talks to people who made brutal journeys across continents with no plan, clinging to the dream that America would save them. That's not some partisan narrative. That's raw, global desperation. And when Andrew says American poverty still doesn't touch what he saw abroad, that's the kind of perspective you don't get from guys who sit in studios all day theorizing about the fall of empires. Then there's the January 6th part. Lex floats that could it happen again line with this subtle doomsday bait, but Andrew just hits him with a totally different lens. He's like, Americans are too comfy. They like Sonic, they like the mall, they're not about to throw hands over democracy. Even the most pissed off MAGA folks don't want to lose their local 7-Eleven. It's kind of brilliant, honestly. Lex wants a philosophical answer, and Andrew just gives a real life one, grounded in the average American's day to day.
There was a controversy a year ago where a woman came forward and said that you were pushy with her. You respected the no, you got the consent, but you were pushy about it. Looking back, can you tell the story of that? What are the lessons you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, I've yet to speak on this for a lot of reasons, mostly because it's just it was a hard time and it's a sensitive subject, and I've wanted to prioritize the reporting. But I think that now I'm ready and able to do so. Everything sort of started on December 30th, 2022, and that was the release date of the HBO project. Like I told you, we didn't know when the movie was going to come out. We weren't told that it was going to come out on that date until early November. And so it was like, oh my God, here we go. We got a movie coming out. I didn't even know it was going to be them. So every day for those 50 days to where I received word and to the movie announcement or to the movie release was like, I was like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. You know what I mean? It was like every day I saw the movie release date as the first day of like the rest of my life. And so I remember the week of the movie release, it was like every day I was like, oh my God, 6 days, 5 days, 4 days. And when it became 2 days, like I was so excited and so like honestly anxiety riddled because it was such a massive platform that I went out to the desert by myself out in the Mojave, got a hotel and just kind of sat there. And then movie release day comes. It was supposed to come out at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I remember it was like 12 hours left, 10 hours left. And then 8 minutes before the movie at 7:52, or I guess it was sent at 10:52 East Coast time, I got a text message requesting a portion of my fat HBO check to contribute toward apparently years of therapy bills that this person had accrued after she says that she felt that I pressured her into giving consent years prior. And I was confused, not only because of the timing, but because this is someone that I hadn't seen in years or spoken to in years, and I presumed that I was on good terms with. So I didn't respond to the text message. And then when I didn't respond, about 7 days later, this person made some TikTok videos and with the help of some friends, launched an online campaign that got picked up by the press pretty quickly.
So what did you feel like when you got that text?
Well, it's tough because on one hand, I'm not opposed to restitution being part of a private accountability process for real abuse. You know, like if you've hurt someone to an extent that it took them out of work or something, like I think they're entitled to some money. But unfortunately, as I later learned, this person had legal counsel, and this was an attempt to basically create evidence by extracting a confession from me to use as precedent for a civil lawsuit to the tune of a couple $1 million.
So when Lex brings up Andrew's past controversy, it's not some sharp attack. It's more like he's feeling out where Andrew stands, maybe hoping to surface something revealing. But instead of getting rattled, Andrew just walks through the whole thing like someone who's processed it, which he clearly has. He's clear, calm, and even manages to talk about accountability without giving in to pressure or cheap guilt traps. And that's the kind of thread through the whole conversation. Lex brings up bias here and there, asks if it affects Andrew's journalism, nudges at political leanings, but never builds into anything. It's like he's trying to sketch the outline of bias without ever filling it in. And meanwhile, Andrew's just sitting there, unfazed, answering straight without falling into any of the usual left versus right binaries. So in the end, the only real bias exposed here was Lex's quiet attempt to box Andrew into one. And speaking of biases, are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.